Good afternoon, and welcome to this episode of the Ad Podcast. I'm your host, Terrance Biggs. When you look at today being Wednesday, you know what it is. You know him, you love him. He is the El Segundo legend. He is the Cal State Northern legend. The man has more titles than a used car lot.
You keep giving me more titles, man.
The managing editor of Last Word on College Football, Tony Siracusa. What's going on, Tom?
Hey, how you doing, T Biggs?
Not bad, not bad. Before we start, there's something that's been
Yeah.
kind of making its way around social media where there's a student reporter from the University of Florida who decided to kind of tweet her. She works for ESPN Gainesville, and she's decided to, tweet her reactions and saying how she's cheering, and that has definitely brought a multitude of reactions. As someone who has came to you when I first started to go to press boxes, you explained that's the one thing you do not do.
Ever. I remember that conversation actually.
Oh, I literally like wrote it down and I literally like made absolutely positively sure that nope, even though I have no investment in the teams, I was like, nope, it's a professional thing. What do you like? Some people agree with how it's uncalled for, but some people are saying, well, she's a student reporter. Where do
Doesn't
you
matter.
fall on this?
Doesn't matter if she's a student reporter. The key point is she's a reporter. And we have talked about in the past what how social media has changed media coverage of events and media coverage of teams and games. And to this degree, to this young lady's degree, what we have is a fan masquerading as a reporter, and that's an issue for me. You got way too many people who are covering a team, and I put covering in air quotes, while talking about how nervous they are for the game or how. No, man, you don't get to be nervous. If you are nervous for the game, it's okay. Keep it to yourself. Honestly, look, you and I have talked about this a cajillion times. I grew up a hardcore UCLA fan. When I started covering UCLA, never once did you ever see me pump a fist in the press box at a good play or even think about cheering for a particular play or particular outcome. Hey, even against USC, who, I grew up learning to hate with a red hot passion, and Dorian Thompson Robinson is beating USC. I wasn't there cheering. I was there taking notes. I was there live tweeting. I was there preparing thoughts and questions for the post game press conference because that is the job. Um, when I was a student journalist, because that's what she is, and I was a student journalist at Cal State Northridge, I didn't root for Northridge. I covered Northridge sports. I covered Northridge football. I I doing the play-by-play for the NPR radio station that had the contract for Cal State Northridge football. I covered them. I did not root for them. It's funny. I've talked to Stan Cotton, who is the play-by-play guy for Wake Forest football on Learfield Sports. And I've listened to Stan call games, and Stan's been doing this, man, a few decades. He's been around. He's a good guy. And I've talked to him sometimes about what I hear on other Learfield broadcasts because while I'm traveling in the car, I'm driving back home, I got a 3.5 hour drive from Virginia or whatever. And I've got my satellite radio and I hit different, games. And you hear a lot of the Learfield play-by-play guys refer to the team as us or we. Man, they're hitting us with a lot of penalties, or
Mhm.
man, we need to do better. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. And I've talked to Stan because I'm like, why is it a Learfield thing? Because I don't hear you doing it, meaning Stan. I don't hear Stan ever doing that. And Stan was like, well, you got to understand, being where we are geographically, we got a lot of fans from a lot of different schools listening to us. And I don't want it to be an us, a we, a them. I want it to be a clear definition and description of what's going on the field. Or he does basketball also, so on the court. Um, and that's just the way I was brought up journalistically. Well, the same is true for me. It's not a we and us, a them. It's any of that. It's a Wake Forest did this, Florida did this, Cal State Northridge is doing this, the Matadors are, going downfield. It's it really bothers me to see and hear that kind of stuff. It makes it feel like the reporter, student reporter, or whatever reporter is trying to kind of give the I'm one of you vibes to the fans. And that really bothers me. You're not there to be one of them. You're there to cover the game. What the fans take from that, what your readers or listeners or your audience takes from that is up to them based on how well you describe what's going on. It's not up to you to share your fandom. And it's much more the case in the age of social media and everybody's got access than it used to be, and it bothers me quite a bit.
For the first decade of my writing, part of my job was to cover the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders. I grew up a Raiders fan since I had hair and it was all one color. But it was, but the first thing I learned, like, no, it's you have to write with a degree of separation. You can feel however you want in the comfort of your own home if you're writing, but if you're in a public
Mhm.
place, and I've seen people in Big Ten football stadiums in the press box cheering loudly, and it is the most disconcerting feeling. And they're all usually either below the age of like 30, 35. And I'm like, come on
Mhm.
now, you know better than this.
Because it makes it feel like that their preference is to be close to the team. It's access instead of just writing what they see, writing what the actual story is. It makes it feel like they're there for the access and the fun to get to, how you get access by being good at your job, by being a good reporter. That's really how you get access. Um, and I too have seen it in press boxes, and the Football Writers Association is it puts flyers up on the walls and press boxes reminding people, reporters, that they're not to cheer in there. There's supposed to be an announcement from the, internal. Most stadiums have internal public address that is just for the press box. Only the press box can hear it, because they'll kind of do like stat updates and things like that throughout the game for the reporters. And they're supposed to have an announcement before the game. But I've seen it a couple of times, and yeah, from, like you said, people under the age of 30. And they got admonished and threatened with having to leave the press box because it's not okay. Again, you're gonna have your fandom. Keep it to yourself.
I mean, it's just it, and just to see the defense of it. Well, she's just a kid. No, no, she's an
Nope,
adult now,
nope, nope. And she's in school to be a reporter, to learn this craft. Well, learn it.
and you don't want to have this attached to you. If
No.
this is what you want to do, I believe that what we do is it takes definitely nerve to do what we do, and I'm thinking that if you can't be attached to nonsense if you truly want to make a go of this career.
I know. I agree. If she's serious about this, you can't do this. It's one thing if you're a radio talk show host. I mean, I've heard people on Sirius XM stations talking about, oh yeah, I'm a fan of this fan. That's fine. They're talk show hosts. That's different than being someone who is being counted on to report the facts and details of a team, an event, a game, whatever the case may be. It's different.
Now, as we make the transition, when you look at offensive linemen,
Mhm.
how do you how do you grade them? Like, what is your criteria?
I think you have to be willing to grade by position. You can't just say offensive lineman, here's some guards, here's a center, here's some tackles, because the skill set for the different positions on the line are significantly different. A couple of things that are unifying is the footwork. But again, the footwork is different for a guard than it is for a left tackle or even a right tackle. One of the things that I like to watch on film is the um, hand techniques. I'll call it. I was about to call it hand fighting, but that sounds weird. But the hand techniques is the offensive lineman delivering that first kind of punch blow. And you watch enough football, I don't really mean punching them, but yeah, kind of delivering that hand fighting and bringing that first blow himself in order to get a little bit of leverage, a little bit of pushback on the defensive lineman or even the linebacker. How's that hand work? It's really, really critical at the NFL level when you're engaged with a defensive lineman or a defensive end, an edge rusher, to have that strength of hand and the hand agility to be able to control the one-on-one.
Now, before we jump into our list, can you explain, as someone who covered UCLA for a very long time, how good was Jonathan Ogden in college? And did you know that he would be what he became?
Yes. Yes. You saw him in college and he was just dominant. I mean, his size, his footwork, his agility. The funny thing about Jonathan is, and I met him several times and had a chance to speak to him. Wasn't covering UCLA all the way back then, but had occasion to speak to him on several occasions. One of the most soft-spoken, nicest guys you'd ever meet. And you think of a left tackle, they've got the quarterback's blind side. We all learned, how important that is from, Joe Theismann being destroyed, right?
Oh,
And it's so it's an intense position. It requires some ferocity. It requires some meanness. And he had it on the field. Off the field, he was one of the nicest guys, just quiet and soft spoken. And you look at him, you go, well, you got to be an athlete. You got to be playing something somewhere. But never would you say, wow, this guy's a tough ass left tackle. He was also a very good track and field athlete at UCLA. Was a shot putter. So it was, you could see it at UCLA. He was just dominant. I mean, I'm not, I don't have his stats in front of me or anything, but I'd be surprised if he gave up, any significant number of sacks at all in his years as a starter there. When you saw him and you saw him play and you kind of go back and watch some film or whatnot, and you see how good he was with his technique, you knew he was going to be good at the next level. Hall of Fame good? Yeah, maybe you could even project that, out of him just because he had all the skill sets and really wasn't lacking for anything when he became a pro.
gave up 2 sacks.
Just that's just insane. I mean, that's just when you think about the guys playing every snap on offense, every down on offense, every game, that's just insanity. You couldn't, sometimes you see defensive lines, they'll do stunts to try and get around a particular offensive lineman. And you'll see all kinds of pre-snap motion by the defensive line. It didn't matter. You weren't going to get past him. You absolutely weren't going to get past him. And he was huge. He was huge. You ever see the movie, what was it? Fletch with
Yes.
Chevy Chase? And there's that moment where he's kind of dreaming, he's fantasizing, uh, playing for the Lakers, and Chick Hearn is calling, you know where I'm going with this. And Chick Hearn says he's like 6'2", 6'3" with the afro. Hey, Ogden used to wear a fro comb. He used to wear a pick in his hair walking around campus. That's how big that fro was. I was always surprised he could, squeeze that into a helmet because he did. He walked around with a pick in his hair. It was hilarious. But dude was all that, man. He really was. Never wore a lot of like gold chains and he drove a pickup truck, an old pickup truck to school, and drove it around town. He wasn't, the sports car guy, the big SUV. He had like the same pickup truck his entire time there. Of course, NIL wasn't allowed and things like that, but still, he was never about the flash, never about the style, was always about the quality of his play.
As we look at the list, what overall, looking at your list, what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I think when you look at the top 10, and I'm gonna be a little bit of a hypocrite here because that when we did the receivers and the running backs, I mocked the 40-yard dash at the combine. Here is one of the couple of places where I think the 40-yard dash matters. Not because I care how, an offensive lineman can get down there in 6 seconds, but they do a 10-second split or a 10-yard split rather. And what that shows you is how quickly they explode out of their position, how quickly they explode out of that stance. So I think for the offensive end, later on for the defensive linemen, that split time actually does matter because it shows that they're quick. One of the things I think you notice is not a lot of high-end guards in this draft. I'm going to say out of the top 10, 12, you're going to get one, maybe two guards. Almost all of them are tackles.
At number five, who you have?
I've got Armand Membou from Missouri. He's a junior, 6'4", 332 pounds. And, he started as a true freshman. Well, earned his way into some playing time. And then at the end of the season, became a starter in his freshman year in 2022. Um, his last season, 2024, you could really see the progress come into his game. It was second team all conference, started all 12 games. Now he's a right tackle. He really very much is a right tackle. You're not going to be able to draft him and convert him into a left tackle anytime soon. Not if you want him ready for this season. He would be a long-term project if you've got a right-handed quarterback, which most teams have, and you want to convert him to the blind side help, you're going to need some time and effort with him. The thing that you can't help but notice about this guy, he made you know all about Bruce Feldman's super freak list,
Mhm.
right? I mean, athletes, especially the linemen, love making that super freak list. Usually comes out in July, maybe early August, and it's the physical freaks. Bruce Feldman's a terrific reporter, and it's really about the physicality of these people. Membow's got 18% body fat. At 332 pounds, only 18% body fat. I mean, that is absolutely phenomenal. At the combine, he had a 32-inch vertical leap and a 600-pound squat. I mean, that is just amazing for a guy that size to be as quick as he is. Um, he's got really good initial contact. We talked about the hands and the arms and getting that first blow in. So he's really good with the hands, gets that initial pop. Um, his drive blocking needs improvement. And that's pretty critical for a right tackle. That's when it's a short yardage play and it's going to be a running play and you got to drive your defender back. You're not just blocking, you're not just protecting. You have to drive them backwards. I need some work on that. But his movement skills, when I was putting this list together for you and I to talk about, I went back last week and watched some more films because I knew that, we'd be covering every position. And so I had some prepared for offensive line. So then when you told me we were doing the offensive line, I was like, hey, thank goodness my weekend was well spent. He's got very fluid motion in pass protection. He's got good footwork. Um, again, being a right tackle and not being a good drive blocker yet, he is going to do well in where you have a lot of zone blocking on offense. Miami does a lot of zone blocking. The 49ers do a lot of zone blocking, where you're really covering that area instead of taking on one man. And so look, I think he's probably late first round, early second round pick. Um, got some work to do, but definitely has the physical ability to get there.
What I like about Membou is the ability to once he finishes a block, like if it's a running play or a pass play, he stays active. Where if it's a
Mhm.
run play, he will win that rep and then try to get to the second level against a linebacker, against a safety,
Yes.
and he stays active. And that to me, that shows someone who understands that his participation doesn't end with just beating the person across from him.
Right. You like a lineman with that kind of motor in them that keeps going.
Who do you have fourth?
A little bit of a risk, a little bit of a gamble. Josh Simmons from Ohio State. And it's a bit of a gamble because he's coming off a knee injury, which ended his season last year after 6 games. Um, he didn't he participated in some of the measurement events, I guess we'll call them, at the combine. Didn't run, didn't do any of that. But did his pro day at Ohio State. Also will have pro days with teams, the individual workouts. So of course they're going to put him through the physical rigors to see how the knee is. Um, but he ran a 5.1540 at his pro day. So that's not bad for a guy his size. He's 6'5", 317 pounds, transferred to Ohio State from San Diego State. And then, like I said, only played 6 games last year. Prior to that, when you go from his time at San Diego State to Ohio State, he started 26 consecutive games. So you're going to be concerned about the injury and the recovery from the injury, but he's not going to get knocked down like some players do for repeat injuries or being injury prone or whatever media term we want to use. This was his first real injury. He started 26 consecutive games, and that is a significant number. He's got really good lateral mobility. You're going to play him left side tackle. He's got really good hand power and elite foot speed. So um, he's a good athlete. He moves well in space because of his footwork. Um, I can see someone going after him top 20 overall.
I look at Simmons. I look at he stays like kind of like a boxer, kind of stays on the balls of his feet, being able to
Mhm.
shift, be able to move, and he, like you said, he has that quickness, especially at the NFL when you have certain pass rushers who are dedicated to just using one move, going wide. He can meet them at the corner and be able to beat them and use his strength at that point to either wash them out of play or keep staring them behind the quarterback.
Sure, sure.
Who do you have for third?
Third, I've got Wyatt Millum from West Virginia. I really like this guy. It's a great story. Local West Virginia kid, stays home, plays at West Virginia. Played all 4 years there. 6'6", 313 pounds. You gotta love his size. Gotta love his height. Um, I'm gonna tell you, probably, yeah, and he can play either tackle spot. You love to see a guy with that kind of height play left tackle for a right-handed quarterback, but he's going to be good either way. He's played both sides of the line for West Virginia. And I tell you, if you watch him and you look at him play, he's probably one of the best West Virginia offensive linemen the Mountaineers have ever had. He really is. Um, his he had a great freshman year, and because I know he was one of the top offensive line prospects, certainly one of the highest ranked prospects ever coming out of West Virginia. But, we were just talking about Jonathan Ogden's sack numbers, the number of sacks he allowed. Millam gave up 3 sacks as a freshman. He only gave up 1 sack in his final 3 seasons total. I mean, that's just staggering. You like the kid for his smarts. He's a 3-time All-American, all conference, all academic rather, all Big 12 selection. Really good. And this is something that you're going to hear a lot of it with offensive linemen as we get closer to the draft is processing skills. How do they see what's in front of them? How do they move? How do they change their positioning to go forward? And you're going to hear a lot about that's a thing that when I've talked to scouts, when I talked to them with the Wake Forest Pro Day a couple of weeks ago, processing skills is a big word for them. This guy still has an untapped ceiling. He isn't there yet. He's that good, and he still has some upside. So he's got really good technical skills. He's got the processing ability. He's going to be a good anchor to somebody's offensive line.
One of the things I notice when we look at Milam is lining up at left tackle. His natural left-handedness comes in
Hmm.
just handy, being able to use your dominant hand the as the outside hand and be able to drive your opponent either inside or be able to kick them to the outside goes a long way. And he played a lot in Morgantown. I think it was
Yep.
42, 43 career starts, which is the equivalent of like 4 seasons basically.
Right.
And I like
Exactly.
the fact that regardless of the offense in front of him, regardless how bad it was, and it was bad, that's why Neil Brown doesn't have a job in Morgantown. The fact that his
True.
play never deviated from it. He played the exact same way, regardless of who he was blocking for and what scheme it was.
I think that's a great point.
Who do you have at number two?
Number two, I've got Will Campbell, the left tackle from LSU. Again, great size at 6'6", 319 pounds. We were talking about the 10-yard splits on the 40-yard dash at the combine. He did a 1.76 10-yard split on an overall time of 4.98. That is really fast for a guy that size. That's really quick out of the blocks for a guy that size. Excuse me. And so here's a guy again, played as a true freshman and worked his way up. He played 3 seasons at LSU. So he's leaving after his junior year. But he became the starting left tackle halfway through his freshman season. Allowed just 5 total sacks across his 3 years. 3 years of football, 12, 13 games a year. You're looking at more than 2,500 snaps if you do the math. And to give up only 5 sacks is really quite something. Um, and he went through a stretch of 24 consecutive games from his sophomore to junior season without giving up a sack at all. I almost said a snack. Maybe he did have a snack. I don't know at that weight, but without giving up a sack. So he's got this great athleticism, ability to redirect. Um, and he's got really good football IQ, picking up the stunts ahead of time, watching the offensive line, pre-snap movement, picking up blitzes. And here's a thing very important for a guy his size. He's what the scouts call a natural knee bender. When he's got to get lower to maintain that pad level and that direct contact at 6'6", you don't want him bending over at the waist. You want him getting down into a bit of a crouch. And I've seen it on the film on him. He does it really, really well.
I like the fact that he is, I guess my biggest strength for him also could be his biggest weakness, where from snap to whistle, he plays aggressive. He likes to mix it up. He does not
Hmm.
show any apprehension on being able to sit there and fight within reason at the line of scrimmage. I worry about him becoming a Trevor Penning type, the guy who went to uh Northern Iowa and ended up with the Saints and got
Hmm.
into fights on the field. Like I get there's a
Yeah.
line. He just once he learns the line. He should be fine, I think.
Yeah, and look, he's technically gifted, he's technically refined, all the other stuff will come.
Who do you have at number one?
Number one, I've got Kelvin Banks from Texas. I think he's best offensive lineman in the draft. I think he's a probably top 6 or 7 overall pick. Um, 6'5", 315. His 10-yard split, again, very quick out of the blocks. Did a 1.79 out of the stance. He won both the Lombardi and the Outland trophies. So if that doesn't tell you how good of a lineman he is, I don't know what else is going to. He started 42 games at left tackle over his 3 seasons at Texas. So he's dependable, he's reliable, he's physically gifted. He's got very good hand techniques. And again, another high ceiling project. He's got more room to grow into the position, put on a little bit more weight, can play either tackle or guard, but really much better at a left tackle position. Um, he's a little shorter than some of these other guys, but I don't think it's that big a deal. He's one of the guys, he does tend to bend at the waist a little bit to get small and maintain the pad contact. So you want to teach him to be a knee bender, as we just said, but he's got really good footwork, and I think he can get that done. And I just there's a big difference between him and everybody else in terms of the offensive lineman in the draft.
I like his upside. I like the fact that at Texas he was allowed to pull. Like that's to me that's a sign, especially in the NFL. The
Hmm.
ability to see a tackle pull and not just pull where
Hmm.
the back has to wait for the tackle to get there. He gets there with plenty of time to spare for the back to make the decision on where they're going to attack, if they're going to roll into the block or roll off his back.
Exactly. Exactly. You've got flexibility in how you use him and to stunt your offensive line.
Exactly. I think that Banks is the top of this draft. Now, if we take a quick little dive into basketball, we have the
Hmm.
Denver Nuggets fired their coach and Mike Malone, who won the team a championship a couple years ago, and currently sits as I want to say the third or fifth place team in the West now.
Fifth place,
And
yeah.
the thought was that Nikola Jokic, the all-world center, that he wants out now because of his coach leaving and the lack of defensive
Hmm.
effort. And the the Lakers are the team that is apparently, according to sports books, the one to be able to land Jokic. If that happens, two questions: Do you think that
Yeah.
LeBron will stay a couple more years? And two, are they going to become an unstoppable force at this point?
I don't think the Lakers can be an unstoppable force. I really don't. I think that they're good. They certainly got better with the Luka deal. And but and does LeBron stay? I don't know, man. LeBron, you can count on LeBron missing a handful of games every year, more than a handful of games with injuries and the aches and pains that come with, playing at his age and playing a physical brand of basketball the way he does. I didn't understand Denver's coaching move. I really didn't. Um, the guy want, have we gotten that impatient in sports? Have we gotten that impatient? And you get the NBA championship just a couple years ago, and now he's gone. Um, you don't make a move like that unless you already have somebody better in mind. Look, not everybody is going to luck out the way the Lakers did. Okay, they fired Paul Westhead couple year, 2 years after winning the NBA championship because Magic didn't like the slow down offense that Westhead was running. The irony, of course, being that Westhead went on to Loyola Marymount, ran the fastest paced offense anybody's ever seen. But they lucked out because it turned out Pat Riley could coach. But they were taking a huge risk at that time. You don't see it happen that frequently when the window from winning the championship to now is so small and yet you get fired. I don't get it. I really don't. Can the Lakers pick them up? Probably. Um, should they? I guess if you got the money and you don't mind being, so far over the salary cap, because I honestly don't know how much room the Lakers have under the cap right now. But will it dramatically change the Lakers? Yeah. Will it change them in the here and now? Maybe in a year or two. Takes time. Takes time to meld the team together.
I agree. I totally agree. As a Knicks fan, I sit there and watch them continuously fail to beat good teams as they failed against Boston last night. It's just they're good enough to look good, but they're also good enough not to make any noise, and they'll never beat the Celtics. It's the never ending like quest for me as a fan to see the Knicks finally beat the Celtics in something that matters. But what's coming up at last word?
Yeah, we've got still more coverage of spring camps all around the country. We've got the transfer portal opening in a little bit more than a week. So, we're going to be all over covering that. The folks can go to lastwordonsports.com and click on the college football link. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got Twitter and Blue Sky with the handle at Last Word on CFB.
As always, Tony, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Agile Podcast.
All right, man. Be well.